There are millions of podcasts being done all over the world that take on the personalities of their creator. Some bring in thousands of listeners each week. Some bring in large amounts of revenue, while others entertain millions and help sell products. If you're like many podcasters, you want to reach your maximum potential. But how? How do you make your podcast stand out from all the rest? Join Dr. Barrett Matthews as he talks to experts who are doing it on The Productive Podcaster. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Productive Podcaster. I am Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I'm excited to have you here because I have an exciting show today. I'm a really interesting show, and I'm glad you guys are here to share it with me. For those of you, if it's your first time here with The Productive Podcaster, I'm going to tell you what we're all about. What we want to do is make sure that you, as someone who's interested in podcasting, or if you're already a podcaster, but you just still may have some questions about whether you're doing it right, I'm here to tell you there is no cookie cutter way to do a podcast. And that's what I do. I bring people to you who do podcasts and let you know they go through some of the same challenges you go through and some of the things you don't have to go through. And they're here to tell you why they do it and why they don't do certain things so you don't have to deal with it yourself, if that makes any sense to you. Now, if you're here for the first time, or if you're a veteran listening to us, one thing I'd like you to do right now is share this with everybody. Let your friends, let your family, let your colleagues know to listen to The Productive Podcast. That we can be found on Google, we can be found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Spotify, Stitcher, and you can watch us on YouTube as well. Make sure you subscribe to all of that so that you don't miss a beat with The Productive Podcaster. Now, as I like to start off every show, I like to begin with a segment I call Pros and Cons.
Pros and Cons. Now,
you're wondering, what is pros and cons, Barrett? Well, pros and cons is a segment where I give you a pro tip on podcasting so you can be a productive podcaster. Now, the one thing I want to talk to you about is naming episodes of your podcast. Don't name the episode of your podcast, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. Don't do that. Don't do that. Think of something clever, something catchy, a how-to or a tip to do this, or introducing something, whatever. Do anything but just naming it 1, 2, 3, 4. That's boring. It doesn't grab anyone's attention. It doesn't make someone want to listen to your podcast. So make sure that you can give them what they call a hook and pull them in. So that is pros and cons for today. What we're going to do right now is take a quick break because I'm going to bring a guest that's really going to bring something interesting to you all. And I know you say all the time, Barrett, you always think your guests are great. Well, that's because they are. I mean, that's the only reason, because my guests are the bomb. And I just like to brag about them before I bring them on. And afterwards, you know I'm always right. So anyway, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back with more of The Productive Podcaster. Stay tuned. Let's face it, you've been talking about starting a podcast for quite some time, but you haven't started yet. Why is that? Could it be that you just don't have the time because your day-to-day keeps you so busy? Or could it be that you don't want to learn all the technical aspects that go into putting together a quality podcast? Well, at Media Boss Club, we take care of that for you. How would you like to have a done-for-you experience? That's right. At Media Boss Club, we build your podcast for you. We will edit your podcast. We will put in the music for you. We even put in commercial breaks that you can put your advertisers in. We will take care of all of the uploading to the great podcast platforms that are out there. That's right, we do everything. All you have to do is just right now go to MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com, and let us handle the heavy lifting for you. Starting a podcast can be a daunting task. There's a lot that goes into it, and you're probably wondering if you're able to handle it. Well, why don't you just take 2 days and let us teach you how to do it at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. That's right. We're going to show you all the aspects of how to start your podcast, how to keep your podcast going, how to attract listeners, and how to make money with your podcast. CreateYourPodcastWeekend.com. Get registered right now. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Productive Podcaster. Ma'am, I want to talk to you about this next guest here, but first I want to ask you a question. Have you ever grieved in your life? I want to tell you, grief is real. Death is a part of the life cycle. There is no one who can tell you when to grieve or how to grieve, but CJ Williams has a fantastic podcast called Sorry to Hear That. That helps the grief-stricken to deal with the pain and to know that they are not alone. And I am pleased and pleasured to bring to the Productive Podcaster none other than CJ Williams. CJ, welcome to the show.
Hi, Barrett. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Look at that big, bright old smile. Oh, y'all can't see it if you're listening, but she has a big, bright smile. So anyway.
Thanks, Mom. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Mom. There you go. Thank you, Mom. Welcome to the show. Now, that is an interesting topic about grief. Sorry to hear that. I love the name of that, too, because it makes you wonder, what's it about? So what? First of all, let's go to the title. Everybody knows I love to bring up the title first. So what made you think of that title?
Okay, so I'm going to be honest. So most people that know me personally know that I'm a little on the sarcastic side. And so everybody immediately goes to, I'm being sarcastic, right? Sorry to hear that sounds like it should be like a culture commentary or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it is about grief. It's about death, specifically. So in 2017, I lost my mother to a car accident. And the thing that I heard the most frequently, and the thing that really also bothered me the most, was people would say, "Oh, CJ, I'm sorry to hear that your mom died, or that, some whatever the bad thing is." And I was like, there could be other ways for you to express your sympathy and still feel as a person feel mm-hmm. like you're being truthful and being genuine in that truth. Right. And it's not saying that I didn't believe them. Right. Yeah. And it's not necessarily about that, but it was like, there's probably other ways to say the same thing that feels better.
No, I get it. So in that, what made you decide to do a podcast on it?
Yeah. So when my mother passed, and I've actually lost both of my parents and a few friends. So people that were really important to me, basically, I said, well, my struggle is that I'm on the younger side. I'm in my early 30s now. And my struggle has always been like, I wish other people would know what it was like, especially if they haven't lost anyone before. So one way that I thought was really helpful was I'm a huge reader. So I read a lot of books, a lot of memoirs, mostly because I was looking for that like sort of missing piece that I was missing in my real life that said like, I understand. I get it. Yes, I've been through something like that. You can hear parts of my story in your own story. So I thought a podcast where I speak to other people who have lost somebody important to them. So that's anybody important, right? Your mom, your dad, your uncle, your sister, your brother, your friend, right? So taking those stories and saying like, hey, to the listener, you are listening to a story where you probably can hear at least small notes of something that you understand. And then for me, as the person that's interviewing them, they're getting the opportunity for me to hear directly from me saying, oh, I think I understand a little bit of your experience. So there's like a little bit of twofold, understanding and empathy that I'm trying to promote in my podcast.
I like that. Now I got to tell you, first of all, I am also the sarcastic person.
Yeah.
I can appreciate good sarcasm, but it's a gift. Everybody doesn't have it. But,
no, not everybody. No one can do it quite like you can. No.
Right. So here's the other thing. Because I'm someone, I don't know what to say to someone when they've lost someone, other than I'm sorry or I'm praying for you, or some of them seem kind of, and I know your point is some of them seem kind of canned.
Yes.
Like canned responses, people say, I'm blessed and highly favored. It's just the same thing. It's a canned response. God is good all the time.
Right.
It's a canned response.
How are you doing? I'm good.
Right. So, and the thing is, we've been programmed to do that. So, I guess my question to you is, for someone who has not lost someone, who is in that situation where they come across someone who has lost someone, what other things
Can you say
to bring that empathy and to make that person at least feel that you care?
Yeah, it's really being as personal as you possibly can, right? Like for me, like someone who didn't know me or my mother super well, it was, CJ, like your mom, from what I hear, was really awesome. I'm sorry that she's not here anymore.
Gotcha.
Right. And like, that's a really huge change from, I'm sorry to hear your mom died.
Yeah.
Like,
you made me think of something, CJ. You made me think of something. Now you're getting into my head here. So, because you made me think that I think, and I could be totally wrong in this,
sure.
but I think that people give that response because they're afraid to delve into it deeper.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It's scary, right?
Okay.
It's scary.
It is, because I'm sitting there thinking right now, if I were talking to you on that, and I start asking questions, first of all, I'm wondering, are you okay with me asking a question about you? Mm-hmm. That's the first thing, because some people, they're grieving, they don't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the people that want to talk forever.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Whew, yeah. I've been on 4-hour interviews, so yeah.
Right. And then you're like, I don't know how to end this because I can't cut them off when they're talking about their parent who just was deceased. So
their person, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting, type of situation to be in.
Yeah, I think I personally believe that you can do it in a couple of different ways. Okay. One is how close are you to them, right? So as I told you, like the person who had made that comment, that made me feel like it felt so good, right? They didn't know me or my mother all that well, but they had heard like cool stuff about her that they were, and that was important for them to say, like, I've heard she was an amazing lady and I'm sorry that she's not here anymore. And that was like that was a statement, right? Like that person took 30 seconds of their day and I'm sure they kept on pushing and that's okay. Yeah. For people that you're afraid to like have that conversation with, I think it's perfectly okay to be like, do you want to talk about your person? If you have the time and they have the time, I think it's totally okay to, do you want to talk about your friend? Yeah. Like, I'm here to listen.
And see, the worst part is that when you ask that and they say no.
Okay. And then that's when you back up and you say, cool. Like, I wanted to make sure you're okay.
There you go. See, you got to be the first guy. The expert here. Now that's
I'm a resource. I'm a resource.
That's the question. Are you a grief counselor?
I am not. So I spend a lot of time listening. That is my superpower. I think that the world would be an amazing place if we spent a little bit more time listening.
I agree.
And so, right, what do they say? Like, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So if you need to listen twice as much as you talk. And so I've been really in my sort of my grief process. It's been more important that I have a lot of initials behind my name. That's not necessary, I think, but being an advocate for listening and listening fully and being present is sort of what I'm really telling the world.
I agree. I mean, even in the podcast realm, as you know, I don't script out my questions.
No.
I don't.
For what?
Because I want to listen to you.
Yeah.
That guide me to what the next question is.
Absolutely.
And listening is definitely vital especially when you're interviewing someone, but when you're just talking to someone in general, period. Yeah. Listening is vital. Listening can do so much more for a relationship. And it's important to the growth of that relationship. So I want to talk to you a little bit more on your podcast. So how long have you had your podcast?
So I started my podcast launched in 2019. Okay. But I had been working on it for, I don't know, about a year and a half before it launched.
Wow.
Yeah, it took me a long time. I was really afraid to launch a podcast, right? So it's like, it's not just like your voice, it's what mic do you use? Like what system do you set up? Like it was all of the like technical stuff behind setting up a podcast and like getting beyond that hump of like, do people care what I'm talking about? Right. So it took a lot of like mental, like, so it didn't, in terms of setting up a podcast, it doesn't take that long, but it does take a lot, if you're like me, and probably many people are, like, you're just a little afraid to like sort of put yourself out in the world. I mean, even coming on here, like it took me a minute to be like, okay, I'm gonna be on camera, I'm gonna like do this thing, and he's gonna ask me questions. So yeah, it's like scary. But a podcast
I do get it. Now let me ask you, so during that period, were you recording them?
I was sort of, so I do have around 20 questions or so that I ask in some way. But it's not necessarily, is it like super blatant that that's what's going to show up in the episode? Because I interview people for about an hour and a half. Wow. 2 hours. The longest one was about 3.5.
Wow.
But I try to keep it as short as possible for the person listening. So most of my episodes tend to run about half an hour or so, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter. So I had started recording pretty early on in the process. And really, I was just like, what does it mean to then think about the story that I want to tell or the theme that needs to come out of this interview? And so I was working on my own version of like producing and thinking about how can I tell a story that it's so personal. I'm asking really, really, really personal questions and trying to get them comfortable with me to tell me everything. Yeah. But then going through the editing process, which takes, at least double of what you're actually listening to be able to work through that process. Wow. So yeah, I was doing it with a lot of deliberate like thought beyond being afraid for people to hear my voice.
Well, I mean, I get it, because a lot of people have that anxiety about someone hearing them and then someone seeing them. It's a whole different thing. I mean, it really is, and I get it. It's real. My mother had me speaking in front of the church as soon as I could stand up and walk and talk.
Oh, she's beautiful, wonderful. Like, pat on the back for her. Like, my mom was completely okay with me being in the background. So being in the front in any way was just like really scary.
Voluntold me a lot of.
Oh, I understand the voluntold.
Yeah, your mother told me that you were going to do this. I'm like, what?
Yeah. She didn't even give me details, but here I am. Yep.
Right. So I get it. I definitely get that. Now, as far as your podcast, how often does your podcast air?
So right now I'm on every other week. I'm currently on hiatus, but I am launching in the next few weeks. So I'm really excited for about 20 more interviews. And I also have like some sort of off weeks where I talk about CJ's diary, which is what I call it. And so I spend a lot of time writing and sort of thinking about the world. And so sometimes I run into like really cool resources. So I'm very excited to like bring those as well to the forefront. Yeah. There's some really cool organizations and courses that I've just sort of run into that I'm very like, this is awesome. So CJ's diary is sort of my way of being like, this is cool, I want you to know. So
here's the thing, guys, for those of you listening or watching right now, I want you to pay attention to the fact that even while she was building up, she was recording. So she had stuff in the can already.
Oh yeah.
Some of you are so anxious about going live and doing it. You don't have to. You don't have to do it live. She recorded them, had them in the. I'm going to tell you a secret, guys. By the time you all hear this, we have already done it.
Yep.
Not live. Yes. So what it does is allows her to work on her life. If she can record these things
and work around my life.
Yes, exactly. Do it around your life. Exactly. So I mean, it's one of those things that I just want people to understand that there's a lot of ways to take the anxiety out of it. Out of doing a 100%. Podcast. And I commend you for that. And you're helping a lot of people.
I hope so.
I'm sure you get great feedback.
I do. I definitely am. I need to co-sign on what you just said. Go ahead and just do it. Like your first, especially if you're an interview podcast like I am, like go ahead. Like you wrote down some questions, definitely write down some questions. Cause like sometimes you need to forward the conversation.
If you're not used to interviews. Yeah. I have to take myself out of this equation.
Yeah.
My major in college was media.
Oh, well, there you go. So, yeah. You're comfortable. Yeah.
As you heard me say, I grew up speaking in front of audiences and I majored in the media. So talking in front of people, interviewing people is something that kind of came naturally for me.
Yeah.
But if it's not something that's natural for you, definitely write down your questions. Now, don't write down everything in your podcast because it sounds very, very mechanical. But you definitely want to give yourself an outline. I have an outline for this show, so give yourself an outline to do that. CJ, I want to thank you so much for joining us down the Production Podcast. Please tell everyone the name of your podcast again and where they can find it.
Sure. So my podcast is called Sorry to Hear That, and it goes by STHT on occasion, and you can find me pretty much anywhere. So choose your favorite podcast player: Spotify, Google, Apple, all of the favorites.
All right. Now I got to make sure I subscribe. I want you guys to subscribe too. Now, hey, guess what, guys? We're going to take a break right now, but CJ's not going anywhere. She's going to be right back for our next segment, which is called PodQuest. And I want you guys to stay tuned because we're going to be right back with more of The Productive Podcaster. It's time to be a boss, a media boss. If you're in business for yourself, it's time that you get your message out. And podcasting is the best way to do it. Let us create a done-for-you podcast experience with Media Boss Club. All you have to do is go to MediaBossClub.com and we'll create a done-for-you podcast right now. That's MediaBossClub.com. How are you going to learn everything you need to know about starting a podcast? Well, at the Create Your Podcast Weekend, we put it all in 2 days and help you get your podcast going by next week. That's right, by next week. All you have to do is come to the Create Your Podcast Weekend and let us show you how to get your podcast up and running. We will show you how to attract listeners. We will show you how to get people to pay you for your products and services. What products and services? The products and services we show you how to create, all at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. All you have to do is go to createyourpodcastweekend.com and get registered today. And we have special bonuses. Some of you will even get us to give you the equipment to start your podcast. That's right. We're going to give some of you the podcasting equipment to get started. Go to createyourpodcastweekend.com. That's createyourpodcastweekend.com and get started on your podcast by next week. Why should you contact Media Boss Club right now? Well, because you can get a podcast done for you. You can learn all the aspects that go into putting together a great podcast and have someone else do it for you. That's right. We will build your podcast around your content and make it so you can concentrate on the money-making activities of your business. Contact MediaBossClub.com. That's MediaBossClub.com today and let us get your podcast started right now. All right, everybody, welcome back. I told you CJ Williams was great. I'm always right on this, aren't I? So guess what? We have another segment, and she is still around, and that segment, of course, is called PodQuest.
PodQuest.
This is where we take an audience question. And for those, before you even ask, you're probably wondering, well, how can I get a question answered? Well, all you have to do is go to our Facebook group, which is called what? The Productive Podcaster. Go there to Productive Podcaster in our Facebook group. Go ahead and post your question in there. Now, I want to say this now for everybody. This is not a place for you to promote your podcast. I've had some people I know, right? I've had to
Don't do it.
promote their podcast. That's not what this is for. This is here to help other podcasters and podcasting. If you have a tip for them, that's great. Wonderful. If you have a question, put it there. We may even ask it here, but it's not the time to promote your podcast. We will have to get rid of you. Sorry. So, the question, CJ, the question. Sorry, y'all don't understand the break. She and I just got real tight. So,
actually, like just as a helpful hint, for Facebook groups and things like that, you should always ask the moderator if it's okay to post your podcast.
Especially when it says they're not to. But anyway,
follow directions.
Yeah, follow directions. The question, CJ, that they have posted is there a certain time to do your podcast, certain time of day to do your podcast?
I feel like this is kind of a longer answer than like morning, night. So for me, like we were talking earlier that it's really important that you sort of let your podcast work around your life, and using the word around being really important. So if you're a night owl, perhaps you do it in the evenings. If you're a morning lark, maybe you do it early in the morning. If you have a really busy street, maybe it's better at a certain time of day. So I live in Atlanta. And so in Atlanta, there is always going to be airplanes, maybe less so now, but there's always airplanes in the daytime. And I've noticed, this is just sort of me being out in the world, I've noticed that in the afternoons, it gets a lot quieter. Yeah, there's still airplanes, but it's just a lot quieter than it normally is. So I spend some of my time in the afternoons. And then because my street gets a lot quieter, I don't have to worry about like people going down my street or hearing dogs barking and whatnot. So I also do a little bit of my work for my podcast like late in the evening, like really late, like midnight 1.
That's good. That's funny you brought that up about the noise. I wasn't even thinking about that because like clockwork, every day, every weekday at 11 a.m., there's some guy that drives down our street and beats his horn as he's going down the street. Every day at 11 a.m.
Yep.
Don't know who he is. Don't know what his purpose is.
You don't need to know. But he's there.
But I mean, I literally now, when I hear it, I'm like, oh, it's 11? So I know what time it is.
Yeah. No, I think that's important that you pay attention to the rhythms of your place.
That is true. That's very good. That's
right.
Good. You said that.
Yeah, like just pay attention to the rhythms of your place. And so if you record at home and you have your 11 o'clock horn beeper, like pay attention to that. So maybe you shouldn't schedule your phone calls at 11. Maybe it should be like 11:30.
Yeah, I can even do it at 11:05 because he's gone by then.
Right.
Between 11 and 11:01, it's like clockwork. He is
he is busy.
So in answering the question, yeah, I'm not sure if the question was asked in relation to thinking that it's a live podcast. Because if you're thinking like it's a better time, but here's the thing: if you're doing it live and recording it, then you have to think about that as far as what kind of natural light do you have coming if you're going to do with camera. If you're not, then like CJ said, you want to think about the noise as well. But also, if you're going to be dealing with guests, what time of day is better to get these guests on? Now, me personally, I'll record it anytime. I record at 9 in the morning. I record at 9 at night. I record at noon. I mean, it doesn't really matter to me.
Me too.
It depends on when that person's available. I'm interviewing because like I said, CJ and I, we talked. This is recorded, so she and I, we talked a lot during a break just now. Because she and I, we like this now. But
this is my new friend, guys. My new friend.
Right, my new friend. Right. But the thing is, my podcast usually when I'm recording, it lasts just about as long as when you hear it, about a half an hour long. So it doesn't take up a lot of my day. I've done like 4 in a day easily because it doesn't take up a lot of my time. But it depends on, like CJ said, around your schedule, around your life. So the best thing I can tell you is put together a schedule of what your day is normally like, and then fit your podcasting in between there. So that way you don't have to worry about stepping out of your comfort zone just to do your podcast, because you want it to be fun and not work. It should be fun when you do it. So that's my answer, and that is our pod quest for today. I want to thank CJ one more time for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. CJ, please tell them the name of your podcast and where they can find you again.
My podcast is called Sorry to Hear That, and I'm CJ Williams, so you'll hear my voice on a regular basis if you listen, and you can find it anywhere that you like to listen: Apple, Google, Spotify, the favorites.
My best friend, my new best friend, guys. So
absolutely, Barrett's great, guys. Please listen. Come on, subscribe.
Subscribe to her podcast.
I can do it for you. Everybody, listen, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors. Go ahead and put it on blast at 11 o'clock and beep the horn. Do all of that. Thanks, guys, for listening.
So, I love it. So, guys, at least you'll know what time I'm not doing my podcast. But so, CJ, thanks a lot for joining us, guys. We're going to wrap up in 2 minutes here, but I want to definitely have you guys make sure that you subscribe to her podcast. And please make sure you follow her as much as you can and share her podcast as well. And also, I want you guys to share the Productive Podcaster out with everyone you know, because guess what time it is now, guys. It's time for my podcast profile. This is where I listen to another podcast, and I think you guys may be interested in listening as well. It's called Wings of Inspired Business by Melinda Whitsock. Wings of Inspired Business by Melinda Whitsaw. If you're into business and you're looking for a little bit more inspiration and getting your business going, I recommend that you pay attention to this podcast. It's very good. I think it's something you'd be interested in. And it's also time for the podcast giveaway. My giveaway today, I'm giving away, actually, this door hanger here for those of you who are podcasting who need a little peace and quiet in your house when you're doing it. You heard CJ and I just talked about the time to do it. Well, need some peace and quiet. Let everyone know this is not paper. It's not cardboard. It's actually a little sturdier than that. And it will hang on your door to let people know, leave you alone while you're recording. So this one goes to Pat Frame. Pat Frame, thank you for paying attention to the show. Thank you for engaging. If you want to have your name called, go to the Facebook group, The Productive Podcaster. Make sure you guys are doing that. And we would love to have you. And make sure you pay attention and subscribe as well. So guys, as we wrap up the show, the last thing I want to do right now is give my productivity quote for you guys to make sure you are living a more productive life. And this one comes from Richie Norton. Richie Norton says, making something take longer than necessary is probably the worst example of work ethic and is patently lazy, but looks busy, not cool. One more time. Richie Norton says, making something take longer than necessary is probably the worst example of work ethic and is patently lazy, but looks busy, not cool. Richie Norton, guys, understand this, guys. Stop doing busy work. Do more productive work. That's really what it's all about. So, guys, that wraps up another episode of the Productive Podcaster. I'm Dr. Barrett Matthews. I want to thank my guest today, Ms. CJ Williams. She was fantastic. Make sure you pay attention to her podcast and subscribe. And make sure you pay attention to our podcast and subscribe and share as well. As I always say before we sign off, don't just settle for being awesome. Set your goal to all them all. And take action, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Productive Podcaster. Be sure to join us next time for another great show. We welcome your engagement, so make sure you participate by joining the Productive Podcaster Facebook group and chime in. Also, share the Productive Podcaster with some of your friends right now. If you have a podcast and you're looking for guests, or if you would like to be a guest on a podcast, join our podcast exchange at www.podcastworlddirectory.com. We'll see you next time.